Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I'm dining to talk about cards this week. So is David. Yes, yeah, I can. Yes, I can tell. It's gonna be a great show, David.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a great show.
Okay. Before we get into whatever Ted's trying to get at, let's just talk very quickly about how people can stay engaged with the Card Talk community here. We have the pod. Obviously, you're listening to that or watching this on the YouTube. We also have the blog over at cardtalk2018.com. We have our YouTube channel, which we're approaching 600 videos on the YouTube channel.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I'm in the middle of my my Dream Chaser campaign. I just released another thing earlier this week, so another scenario earlier this week. So that's a lot of fun, and we're getting close to the release of the Arid Mithrin campaign, which I can't wait for. The Arid Mithrin cards are the only cards that I decided that I was going to buy a second copy of. I bought the hero box when it came out, and now when the campaign box drops, I'm also going to buy that. I need to support the game that I love. Not to say that everybody out there needs to do that, but I'm a little bit weird.
Yeah, it's just to touch on it briefly, I think the player cards for that cycle were excellent. A really lot of fun cards we're gonna get to talk about for some of the ones maybe we haven't done coming up. Mm-hmm. And I also really, really enjoyed some really fun thematic quests. My only thing about them is more than a handful are a tad on the long side. So if you want to sit down where you might think you're going to play 2 games that night, you might end up only playing 1. Yeah. Not that they're bad. They're just a little on the longer side when you compare them to a few other scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of them are long and boring long. Ghost of Framsburg and the Widowed Heath sometimes can be boring long. But the other ones I feel like are long, but you're still teetering on the edge usually, for most of the game. Like Lost in Mirkwood is one of my favorite scenarios in the game, and like you're playing that and you're going through, and you may have been playing for 12 or 14 rounds, but you still don't know if you're going to win or lose that thing.
Yeah, and that one in particular has got quite a bit of replayability also.
Yeah,
that I really enjoy.
Yep.
So yeah, it's exciting to see them release some stuff into the wild. So.
Yep.
Into the wilds of Ravaunion.
Which, for anybody who doesn't know, if you're a new player, that was what the deluxe box was called in the old. No, wait. Yeah, the wilds of Ravaunion, right? Yeah.
What?
Right.
Okay. That's. I feel like I was just saying that because that's just like a descriptor that came up in Tolkien's works. Like it's the Wilderland of Ravaunion, like that area of Middle Earth. That's sort of east of the Misty Mountains and where Mirkwood is, and kind of east and west of that. But I think you're right. I think the expansion was actually called the Wilds of Ravaunion.
Yeah, the deluxe was called the Wilds of Ravaunion.
Which actually today is one of the nope. I was thinking that maybe the card we're discussing today was from that box, but it's not.
It is not. It's actually from the Ghost of Framsburg.
That's right. Which was from the original release style. But now when you get the new pack, you're just going to get this in with all of the cards.
8 heroes all at once and all the cards. And man, I love this card. I know that I'm known in the community for Sylvans and Hobbits, but I love this card. So, and Ted, I feel like this fits a couple of your criteria for a hero too. So, before we get any further, Ted, what's the card we're talking about today?
Today is Dain Ironfoot.
Or, if you know how to speak Tolkien, Dain
Ironfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is rather exciting. David, why don't you rattle him off for us if you would?
Oh, wow, Ted, you're deferring to me. I never get to read cards. Not that I never get to read cards, but I don't have, it's something I typically don't get to do. Anyways, Dain Ironfoot is a spirit hero. This is the spirit version. Earlier in the game, there was a leadership version. 11 threat cost with 1 willpower, 2 attack, and 3 defense, 5 hit points. Dwarf, the rightly traded noble trait, and warrior, his... funny, his leadership version doesn't have, in the original packaging, doesn't have the noble trait, but when it got repackaged, Jeremy was able to put the noble trait onto Dain in the leadership version. But anyways, he's also a warrior, and it says, while Dain Ironfoot is defending, he gains action, discard the top card of your deck to give Dain +1 defense for this attack, limit 3 times per phase.
Wow.
And the reason why, Ted, I said that it fits into your thing is because you've always said, for as long as you've been on the show, almost maybe more than 4 years now, you've said that you always need a defender. Like, you can get away with maybe not questing as strongly, and you may be able to get away with not attacking, but if you don't have a defender off the rip, then you're probably in a bad way. And so Dain can do it.
Yes. So his ability is based purely on defending, right? Like, that's his whole ability. Just when he's defending, he gets this text. And I'll reiterate it again, that if you don't have a strategy for defense, you'll just kind of do bad, right? Because like, and enemies are gonna come out of the deck, and if you don't defend them, your heroes will die, and without heroes, you're not winning. So Dain presents a very strong solution to this problem by having your defense handled by a hero with high stats and a great ability.
Yeah, I mean, and his ability fits right in with the, I guess FFG said it's called the Dwarven Delving mechanic, but us in the community that's been around for a long time call it the Dwarf Mining mechanic, where you just discard cards from the top of your deck to get certain values out of it. Hidden Cache and Eredluin Miner are the two that I think of whenever I'm thinking of discarding. And so those two are the two cards that you want to make sure you have in that dwarf deck, because you can get benefits from discarding those off the top of your deck. But back to Dain, it's like, this character, this hero can take a defense from a hill troll from the very beginning. Like 6 defense, the hill troll attacks for 6. And you're not taking that threat raise, and there's not many other heroes in the game that can do that. Beorn can do that.
Yeah. So just to break down just rules wise, his ability is when defending. So that kind of opens up a whole couple of action windows to trigger his ability. So if you're defending against an attack of Strength 4, you declare Dain as a defender. You could, after you declare him, decide to discard the top card of your deck, give him +1 defense, or you could not at that time. You could also then flip, if you pass, you could flip the shadow card, and then while that shadow card's resolving, you could do it at that point. So if the shadow card is attacking enemy gets +1, so now he's attacking for 5, you could then choose to discard 2 cards and boost its defense by 2 to match it and not take damage. So his ability is very flexible because you can trigger it when you need the defense, but if you don't have to, unless you want to intentionally, as you said, Dave, discard cards off the top of your deck, which you could just do it anyway, even if you don't need the defense.
Right.
You could still do.
Yeah, and you can only do it 3 times per phase. It's not limited to attack. So if you have, something attacking you for 4 and something attacking you for 5, you can, if you have a ready, he's in sphere for unexpected courage, you can defend and boost his attack 1 time for 1 defense, ready him and boost his attack 2 more times for the second attack. It's not per attack that you're limited. It's just 3 times per phase. So you can, and that's per phase. So you can, if you're taking an out of combat phase attack, during engagement, this thing makes an immediate attack when it engages you. You can use him. So, he is your solution to defense if he's in your deck. That's what I use him for.
Yeah. He does also happen to have 2 attack, which I have occasionally used him to attack with.
Yep.
In just really weird scenarios when he's not been defending. But then his willpower is just a base of 1. But yeah, if you are looking for a strong hero, right, like you can't go wrong putting this guy in your deck. You can't, unless your deck is never gonna be attacked, which is just,
right. Which can happen in multiplayer. You're playing 4-player, and you bring the support deck.
Right. Yeah. Right. You run like a really low threat deck and have other ways to deal with enemies. But if you plan on dealing with any sort of enemies at any point in the game, he's really, really strong to just always have a base of 6 defense. And then there's about 101 cards that can be attached to him to make him play better. So I don't know, Dave, do you have a few, like, it's going to be hard to list all of them, but I think there's some honorable mentions, some really top ones to consider that make him strong.
Well, the ones, the couple that I think of is, and again, for everybody out there listening, if he is your solution for defense, right, then you really want to lean into that defense thing. So, like Ancestral Armor can go onto a noble hero, and that gives him +2 defense and +2 hit points. Yep, and that makes him impenetrable. It's a leadership. Yeah. It's a leadership armor. Raiment of War for 2 can go on him, and that gives him, +1 attack, +1 defense, +2 hit points. That takes up both his slots. The Ring of Thror. We did all the guarded cards, Ted. That was your favorite bank of episodes, Ted. We know how much you love guarded cards, but the Ring of Thror, that, I don't want to say it was, designed purposely for Dain in mind, but, you discard a card and you if it's an attachment, you put it into play and then you get to ready a guy, it's almost perfectly suited for Dain.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards. Yeah, that is quite good because it readies him and plays a card potentially for free.
Yeah, right? It's like stupid good, and so those are the things that you want to lean into. If you have access to tactics, like a round shield would help. Because that's a 0 cost attachment, but you get a bonus if it triggers a shadow effect. So the shadow things help because Dain doesn't necessarily do anything to help you mitigate shadow, stuff. But he's in the sphere that has a ton of shadow cancellation. Like, this is the, Jubair from the previous cycle did a lot of help with defense and spirit for allies. Mm-hmm. But this guy's got to be, when you think about the best defenders in the game, you think Beregond, you think Beorn, and this guy's got to be up at the top, in that category.
Yeah, like just strongest out of the gate, you can guarantee defend for 6 turn 1, and with doesn't matter what your hand is, it doesn't matter. Do you have cards in your deck?
Right.
So Then great. So with him, I will say, you can burn through your deck faster than normal if you're milling 3 cards a turn. And then if you're playing extra cards that let you draw, so some people choose to mitigate that. There's one of two things they do. Some people will play the core card, Will of the West, which will just let you, Spirit card lets you shuffle in your discard pile back into your deck, remove it from game. The other card is, there's a card that came, that also I think is in the Arid Mithrin cycles, the Dwarf Pipe, which is a spirit card, an attachment that says whenever you mill a card, you can exhaust the pipe and then put that card back on the bottom of your deck. So if you know that card, and then there's plenty of ways to shuffle your deck too, so the card's not buried there, right? So there's a couple of ways to deal with the recursion aspect as well.
And then there's ways to like organize the cards that you're discarding. You know, you can use Hero Gandalf, and then you can use Maladra Stargazer, which is, you know, the guy that allows you to look at the top 5 cards. You can use Gildor and Gloria. You know, like there's all sorts of things you can do to make sure that this guy's firing on all cylinders. I didn't mean to interrupt, but it just felt like the time to like go in there.
Other great combos. Well, even he plays great with Noldor, because Noldor play with cards out of the discard pile, right? Like Elven Light. So you mill over your Elven Light, and then great, Elven Light's in your discard pile. Pay a resource, put Elven Light in your hand, draw a card. Like,
right.
He can trigger so many different
Glorfindel. You discard things. Glorfindel. Oh, well. Ally Glorfindel. You know,
ally Glorfindel, yes.
Yeah, like
who can be played. He's an ally that can be played from your discard pile. Mm-hmm. So he triggers so many different things, on top of giving you a great thing you need to your deck. So there's a couple of heroes that there's so many different ways to build him too, but I know there's probably some fan favorites that if you'd like to rattle off one or two of yours as well.
Well, I mean, I use him with Hero Gandalf.
That's right, that boy.
You know, and then I mean, my Dain in the discard deck, like I have Spirit. I have a Leadership Glowin in there. You know, so because Leadership Glowin can take the attack, and he's leadership, so you can, you know, you turn the damage that he has into money, and then you can, you know, and then you heal him up, and you do it all over again. And you know, there's what's the Hardy Leadership, and you know, there's all sorts of dwarfy cards. You know, if you're
so many,
and if you're playing with Thorin Oakenshield, you can do the 5 dwarf thing. You know, like this.
Yep.
So, big picture, Ted. Like, there's 2 ways to play dwarves mainly. If you're going to play a dwarf deck, it's like the 5 dwarf thing and get all the bonuses with Thorin and, you know, Ori and Bomber, you know, like, and then you get all those, you know, then you're drawing, getting extra resources, and you're able to get out the Dwarf Swarm that way. Or there's the discard, right? Where you're discarding again, FFG calls it the Dwarven Delving deck. But then there's, you know, we call it Dwarf Mining deck, you know, and then there's all sorts of support cards for that as well. Like you were mentioning, you know, the Noldor sort of stuff. So, you know, this guy, he fits into both of those archetypes, and he's going to help you out no matter what.
Yeah, if you're really, if you pick up this, if you're kind of new and you pick up this Arid Mithrin pack, and this is just, you know, some of the heroes you have, or if you're just struggling to defend, there are plenty of scenarios, especially in the Arid Mithrin cycle in which he came out. Oh, yeah. There are some strong enemies.
Yeah. I mean, I'll only spoil this is that, like, dragons. This was the dungeon crawler dragons thing.
Yes.
I won't go any further than that, but this was this cycle I think I loved the most because it reminded me the most of Dungeons and Dragons. You know, my first love, you know, as a kid when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you know,
a lot of great just lore in that cycle too. The story is real fun to follow along. And yeah, thematically, a lot of the quests just hit home, and they feel really big and epic for the most part. But Dain will help you succeed in them, I can say. So I think one more common card to play with him that I'll mention too that would be really good for players is Armor of Erebor, is also really common.
Yes.
That came out in the cycle.
Right.
It's,
but I play solo. Does the Armor of Erebor give you +1 in Sentinel?
Yeah, it's a spirit attachment for 2 that gives you +1 in Sentinel. So in solo play, guess, yeah, +1 defense. Thank you. Right. Not as strong because you're only in the +1 defense, but in 2+, giving a strong defender Sentinel. So if you don't have any enemies, you can help out another player. That's very, very good to have.
Yeah, I mean, so like all the times we've talked about dwarves, none of that is, exclusive or excluding Dain. Like any of the dwarf, bonuses you get, or any, like all the things that impact dwarves. This works. The what is it? The Song of Durin that gives your dwarves +1, +1, +1. Like all those things are helpful and will work on Dain, but he is a special defender in my book.
Yeah. Yeah, and the list of, like you said, the list of dwarf cards is very long, and we reviewed probably a lot of them individually, and then we've talked about how a lot of them fit into the dwarf archetype. And again, we've named a handful, but it's only a handful.
Right.
And the thing is, even with none of those cards, he's still good.
Right. He's still good. Just if you he's like Galadriel, in my opinion. And I've come a long way on Galadriel. Okay, like Galadriel to me is an amazing hero. I did not like Galadriel when I first got her, and so, but you do not need to build a deck around Dain. He only becomes better if you do. But you could just put him at 11th threat. He's not necessarily like a splash hero, but you could just put Dain in a deck without the Hidden Cache and the Heirloom Miner, without King Under the Mountain and the Ring of Thror, and you could just put Dain in your deck as your defender and your spirit access, and that's perfectly fine. That's all you need.
If he's your single spirit hero, right? You get to play Test Will, you get to play Hasty Stroke, you get to play Unexpected Courage, a lot of just inexpensive core set cards, even.
Right.
Yep. He gives you access to play those, and then you could have 2 other tactics heroes and have a really good deck at fighting, or if you're building a solo deck, you splash with just other heroes that are good at questing and fighting to balance it out. Yep. So I don't think we can give him enough praise. Then if you haven't played him, just do. And there's, I don't know. I'd have to look at the entire pool of heroes, because when we always review heroes, it's like here's combo cards and here's things you do to make them excel, attachments you should play with them.
Well, I mean, Balin, who cancels a shadow effect, and like the one, right? You spend 1 and Balin, leadership Balin. So like, and there's a dwarf that does the one thing that Dain doesn't do well, like, I mean, of course you're not using him to quest. I guess you need some sort of questing, but like there's your combination, or Erkenbrand, like who cancels the shadow effect, and it's like, okay, like,
but yeah, he doesn't need anything, and that is a superpower all on its own,
right?
Because there's not as many heroes as you think that would fit that category. Like, there's plenty of heroes that if you play with no support, they play just fine. Right. But Dain really stands out, where if you literally play nothing with him to support him,
right,
he's awesome. And that's a sign of like a really strong card.
Yep, and I get the sense also, though, he's not horribly OP.
No, because his ability is still limited, per phase, and you could find him still taking damage when you're getting through multiple attacks and you haven't played other defenders or given him an action economy. But he does have a 5 hit point pool, which is a lot So
Beefy.
yeah, he can even, he's such a strong defender. You can even like put archery damage on him. And then like, if you have healing, you can like heal it later. Um, so yeah, his ability is still limited, and he can help you in siege quests to an
Yeah.
extent, because he's still so in a siege quest, you're questing with your defense instead of your willpower. It's a very limited mechanic, and he'll still quest for 3 and during a siege, but he can't use his ability because his ability specifically when defending. So if something else is counting his defense, you can't just decide to just boost it whenever. It's specifically when you've declared him as a defender.
Right. So it's funny because this, like, a lot of times we pick out like certain scenarios where a hero will shine, like, hey, if you're looking at, Karn Doom, Balin's gonna really lift some heavy weight because he can cancel shadow effects and stuff like that, or whatever, but here it's almost like there's a few scenarios where dying doesn't work well, and it's like, okay, it's like the Druidon Forest, right, where you have to defend with your willpower, right? Like, you're in that Beregond, and you're trying to, talk him. You're at the round table talking to him and making sure Drewberry Drew or whoever it is, But like, so that's, again, to your point, is that's where we are with the hero. It's like, okay, this guy is good in almost all the situations that you can think of.
Yeah, his only contention is that there is a leadership version of him, which is also strong in its own right. Right. He does like both versions are pretty strong. Where his leadership version is very, very specific to boosting the dwarf archetype. And so if you maybe go to an event or get together with some friends, and someone wants to play this dwarf archetype deck to boost all the dwarfs in play, the leadership version does that in a way that the spirit version does not. But these two they fill very, very different roles from each other, which is also good. So they don't really want to occupy the same space.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth, veteran players, you have access to Thorngill, which allows you to pick
that too,
a matching named hero from your collection. So you can start off by playing whichever Dain you want, play Thorngill for 3, and you bring out the other Dain, and now you have both abilities, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that with starting with the leadership version. So that way your deck gets the bonus right away, and he's still a good defense. His leadership version has the same stat line, so he still defends for 3, which is strong. And then you add to him this ability to just boost his defense innately, which is just strong.
Yeah.
It's very fun to do.
So the last thing I will say is, because I specifically asked Caleb about this on a show that we talked about the rules. And so sometimes an enemy may make an attack at the end of a phase. So the end of the phase is not part of the actual phase. So in theory, if something attacks you, I'll have to look it up. I'll insert clip here if I can find it, of him talking about it. But I think that you can chuck 3 cards for an attack during the phase, because it's per phase, and then the end of phase is separate. So then you could do 3 more during the end of phase, at the end of the combat phase, or at the end of the refresh phase, or whatever, like that's.
Yeah, the end of phase is this really, really weird kind of segment that falls in, right? It falls like almost in between phases, in a sense. It's just kind of its own niche rules thing that does work to the benefit, I'd say, of the player most of the time.
Yeah. So,
but
in case that comes up, there's not very many enemies that make an attack at the end of combat. But
yeah, it's a few specific quests and like unique enemies that have these crazy abilities.
I feel like it's one of the Balrogs make an attack at the end of combat or something.
I think there's something in the Sands of Harad campaign too.
Yeah,
with
like
the serpent,
like the black serpent. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Like there's a couple of them, but I remember asking him specifically because I love Dain Ironfoot so much. He's just so good.
What do you love about his artwork?
Or
not at all?
I mean, I guess I love his artwork. I think his artwork is good, not great. So for anybody who's listening to this and not watching it on the YouTube, he's obviously underground. Well, maybe not obviously, but it appears he's underground, and he's shoving his shield into the face, under the chin of an orc or goblin who is holding something. So it looks like he's just mowing down. He's holding a hammer, a battle hammer behind him, whose hilt is oddly perspectived. It's like Battle Santa Claus to me a little bit, but like it's still good artwork. Like it's got the detail that the later cycles have in the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Magali, but I do like the artwork a lot. I like, in the background you can see the entrance to the, like some
other mountain.
Yeah, mountain pass or whatever, So
mm-hmm.
maybe that's the entrance to Erebor. I don't know, like Dain.
Yeah, that's what I was. It's like it could be outside Erebor. It could be under Moria. Just pick like your dwarf mountain. It could be like Ered Luin, like the Blue Mountains, because the mountain behind them is very blue, almost spirit colored, kind of like that bluish gray. So I think of the Blue Mountains. I'm trying to think what other mountain ranges. There's all iron. Yeah, take your pick.
The Ash Mountains, probably not the Ash Mountains. Yeah. That's a little too Mordory. But yeah, I mean, do you like the art?
I do. Overall, I feel like it's he's an action fighting, like he's fighting and like defending, like he's doing on the art what he does in the game, and I like that concept.
Yeah, I don't know if he's attacking or defending, but whatever he's doing it with his shield. So
he's doing it well.
Yeah, he's doing it very well. Well, should we ring this guy?
Yeah, you know what they say, if you love it,
better put a ring on it. So, for anybody who doesn't know, or maybe new to the show and doesn't know, maybe you've forgotten, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we ring a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the best card in the game, or one of the one card to rule them all. Or a 10, which is one of the worst cards in the game, a card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made. And so only because I'm vacillating between two numbers in my head.
I think I know what they are.
I'm going to have Ted go first here. That's the beauty of being the host of the show, is I get to make these decisions on the fly. So Ted, what's going on, buddy?
So I think... I don't know how many cards I've rated at the top 9s and 10s, but I'm gonna give him a 10.
Ted, that means the worst.
I'm gonna give him a 1 because I forgot how a ranking system works.
I even went over it at the very beginning. A 1 is the one card to rule them all, or that's the best card in the game.
Listen to what I mean, Dave.
Oh, okay.
Right, exactly. I don't know how many cards I've ranked bad, so I'm going to rank it good to offset all the bad cards.
Right.
I don't know. He's up there, and I feel like I got to give him a 1 now, because if you want to, he's just all we did was talk about how great he is for like the last 25 minutes. We don't do that very often because he doesn't have that many weaknesses. right? Like, of course, yeah, he's not a great attack, but like his job is defending. And yes, his ability is limited, but like you can offset that so easily with cards in the card pool. And even if you don't, it doesn't matter. The only thing that players I sometimes see is when you mill a card over, it's the card you're waiting for. You're like, oh, I'm waiting to get Steward of Gondor. It's going to be awesome. And then you defend with Dain and you flip 2 cards and you flip over Steward of Gondor and you're like, oh my God, the Steward is gone. But like, there's so many ways to fix that. You can reforge. There's so much stuff with your discard. We talked about Elven Light. We didn't mention about Reforge.
What is it? The Erebor, not the. What's the Master of the Forge? Not Master of the Forge. What's the early card that allows you to get a
Erebor Hammersmith?
That's it. Yeah, like another dwarf, right? Like
expand and fight out of the core lets you plan out. Like it doesn't matter. And we talked about Dwarf Pipe and Will of the West. Like whatever you did with him, you could just undo super easy,
right?
So it just doesn't matter. And again, if you just decide to throw that strategy out the window, he'll never fail at what he does,
right?
You'd have to take like 2 strength 8 attacks in like 1 turn, like, you know, because even if you ready him and you can't use his ability a second time, he might take some damage, you know. But like it's hard for him to fail. So I give him a 1 because if you just put him in your deck, you're just going to do well.
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly where I was going, minus the confusion on the rating scale. Like,
yeah, a 10, that's exactly where I was going.
Yeah, right. I mean, the 1, I was debating between a 1 and a 2, but I just don't see a downside. I think it's a testament to the design, like, how well Caleb and Tyler were able to design cards as the game matured. Like this, like you had to keep it consistent with the previous version of Dain with the stats, and it, instead of boosting other dwarves, he boosts himself. He boosts not the stat that the other Dain boosts, but boosts the defense because the other Dain boosts willpower and attack. Yeah. Like there's just so many things to just say this card was designed well, and then to put it into, you know, a deck and understand how just really good this card is. Like, yeah, of course you don't want to discard cards, right? Like that's, unless you build the deck to do that. But, you know, you also don't want to lose heroes. So if you had the option of discarding cards or losing heroes, discard the cards. Like like you said, there's always a way to undo it. So like, it's not a huge problem. Just discard the cards and defend that hill troll, and who cares, right? Like, so I have to settle on a 1 as well for Dain Ironfoot. He's just an amazing card. If you're having trouble defending, there's like 3 or 4 cards to go at. You're never going to see Hero Bjorn if you're revised content only, and that came out in the Hobbit boxes. It's not coming out. So then you're stuck with Beregond or maybe Grimbjorn, which came out in this cycle, in this
He's
hero.
Also in this cycle. That's right.
Yes.
Holy smokes.
I know, like, and which is another testament to really good card design, right? Like, so I don't know. It's just like this has got to be a 1. I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah. So, anyways, there it is. The infallible card review of Dain Ironfoot, the spirit version of Dain Ironfoot. So join us again as we talk about more cards in the game. Join us next week. Okay, everybody. Have a good day.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.